Instead, watched her plunge the needle into Joey and depress the plunger. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "This is a drug that the doctor ordered." I said, "What is it?" And she said, "You'll have to talk to him about it." Well, that really didn't happen because he wasn't available, according to the staff. I took Joey home and he started to slowly decline. I brought him back the next day. His regular vet saw him and immediately did labs, which revealed the elevated kidney values. But by then, all the Joey's vet could do would be to try to do whatever he could. He kept him overnight. He did whatever he could, and then the next day they called us and said the prognosis is poor. You have to make a decision. And obviously, we knew what we had to do. We didn't want to watch him uh,
Right.
with labored breathing, and we could see he was declining. So we had to make that horrible decision. And that was the first domino that was knocked over in the genesis of Joey's legacy.
So when you think back to when you were in the exam room and the vet tech comes in, were you ever given any kind of informed consent on what that drug was? Was there any side effects or anything? No.
No. Tech
So,
walked in. Tech walked in right in his hind quarter, depressed the plunger, and by then the drug's in his system. No, I was never no conversation, no informed consent, none of that. No.
so Anna, when we go back and we talk about standard of care, I know you deal with a lot of these cases, but have you found, like, why aren't we giving informed consent by our veterinarians? Do you know if it's the law? Do they have to? Why aren't we giving these warnings?
Yeah, generally speaking, yeah, you should be given these warnings, especially because you need to make basically, as it says, you have to give informed consent to these procedures. Now, it's there are some things, and I'll probably touch on that later, that a vet cannot do if you don't give consent to, generally speaking, in like dental cases, it's considered veterinary malpractice if you want extractions done without having x-rays performed, because a vet can't see, or dentists can't see what all is there. So you can't ask them to do these things without having certain things in place. But there are other things like shots. We talk about like any shots, everything from rabies to all the core versus the non-core vaccines. Most vets just don't take the time to tell you that, while this risk may be small, there is a risk of developing a sarcoma, injection site sarcomas. They happen. I've seen them, in many different cases. I've gotten calls about just about everything. And there are certain vaccines that lead to are more likely to cause a sarcoma than others. But in none of these cases have I heard, or it's not in the records, it's not anywhere in the recollections of the people involved, that they were given informed consent that there's a chance of this happening. And this happens with a lot of procedures. And when I've deposed veterinarians, and it's not to say all vets, but just, many,
Sure.
They say that they don't take the time to do it, or they just don't, because it's such a remote chance. And it's very disturbing when you take a deposition like that, like especially like the one I did more recently on dental. We asked the veterinarian, like, did you tell, the pet or the companion animal parents, the clients, that it was that you might break their animal's jaw if you take this, if you extract this tooth. And that's what happened, is it broke the jaw. And the vet said no. And I'm like, well, do you now, after this happened to you? And the answer was still no. And it was just like, why would you not? I mean, even to protect yourself, to say, like, look, this is, you can even say that this is something you really need to do, because it's going to hurt your animal if you don't. But in a lot of situations, these are things that are elective, like the non-core vaccines are elective. And you should be told. I mean, the rabies vaccine, everybody pretty much, I know it varies sometimes for the health of the animal. Like if they're not healthy enough to get a vaccine, say they have cancer and their body's already fighting something else, they just don't have enough to form, to devote other systems to form antibodies for things, they can get an exception until they are healthy enough. But for the non-core especially, it seems just crazy to not tell people, like, here's what could happen. I think you should know.
Not only do the majority of veterinarians, and I say that because we are lacking in our homeopathic veterinarians and our holistic veterinarians. So I feel very confident in saying the majority of veterinarians not only don't tell you there's a difference between non-core and core vaccines, but they also make it sound as if you legally have to get those vaccines. And to me, that's malpractice. I don't know if it would be to you. If a veterinarian makes me believe, like when you get a postcard in the mail and the postcard says your pet is due for vaccines, to me that is malpractice, because you're making me believe I have to get these vaccines by law. Do you think that in any way we're going to be able to fight that? Because all of my clients tell me their vet says they have to.
Yeah, but I usually see those cards too in the mail about, like, you're due for this, and it implies it. But I think where the vets kind of get into, I guess, some issues is when they tell you you have to, when in fact, like, under the law, your animal really has to be healthy enough to get these vaccines. And there are and there are other things which I know that Scott's kind of been helping and working towards, to make sure is available, is the titering. To make, because you can over vaccinate. And certainly nobody here is an anti-vaxxer. It's just that when you're dosing the animals, like with these vaccines, when, their bodies may, especially as they get older, they may not be as able to, to perform the functions required to get immune responses and things like that. And they're kept in a protected environment. They're not going to be out anywhere where there's rabies, or exposed to even a chimney where a bat could come through with rabies.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen it all. But I mean, they need to be able, there needs to be some things in place to tell the pet, pet parents, hey, you could have a titer done. Let's see if there's protections that would also, assuage the fears of the government bodies that have mandated everybody, have the rabies vaccines. And so they need to kind of be telling people of these alternatives. And that's come up also even after getting vaccinations, because like we've had animals that were given parvo vaccines that didn't take because they weren't timed properly, and the animal shockingly got exposed to parvo at the vet facility.
Wow.
After this. And so it just, there needs to be a lot more information provided to companion animal parents to let them know, like, here's what your options are. It's not just stamp, you have to do this. It's like, here's the reason why we do it. Here's your options, and this is the decisions that these are the decisions that you can make. And it might just be a time issue that they don't want to take the time, but they don't really have to do that. They could have like little videos you watch. I mean, that they could have lots of different ways if they don't want to take that time to interact with, the people involved. Yeah, there are other ways to making sure to be making sure that they are informed,
to educating them and informing them. It's interesting that you say that the puppy got parvo from the veterinary hospital. What's interesting to me is, so I've had many
allegations that were made.
Okay, that's fair. Because of course it is really hard to tell, but I will tell you, I have had many conversations with Dr. Jean Dodds, who is on the panel here and helps with Joey's legacy and goes through a lot of stuff. And she has told me that in her research that she's done over the years, parvo is the most shedding vaccine. And so it's interesting to me when people, this is going to be hard to say, but boarding your pet at a veterinary hospital to me seems very, I don't think I would want to go on vacation at one of the big hospitals, is my point. And so when those vaccines are constantly be given to dogs and they're running around in veterinary hospitals, I think the environment is very much set up for a puppy to come in and actually get sick because of the timing. There's so many dogs running around right now that get the vaccines and then they just sent on their merry way as if they're protected. It's the same as us. That's the one thing about the coronavirus in humans that has been beneficial for me as someone who's been trying to educate people about how vaccines work in the body, is that people are starting to understand, just because I got a shot in the arm today doesn't mean that I'm protected an hour from now or a day from now.
Right. Or at all, because you may not, your body may not have
never. Yeah. Dr. Dodds said she did a study of a group of puppies. This was many years ago.